Welcome to Embrace the Dark and the Light, a podcast about healing, identity, purpose, and being human. I'm your host, Kelly Street, a therapist, writer, and lifelong seeker. I believe that healing isn't linear. Darkness isn't something to fear, and the journey inward is the most important one we'll ever take. Each episode, I explore the full spectrum of what it means to live a conscious, intentional life, from the messy and tender to the sacred and expansive, through a mix of solo episodes and honest conversations with fellow creators, healers, and thinkers. We'll walk together through the shadow and the light, trusting that both have wisdom to offer. You're not alone in this. Welcome to Embrace the Dark and the Light. I am so excited about today's episode because it is all about the fact that I am turning 40 years old on August 10th and all of the, quote, wisdom that comes with that. So to start, I want to tell you something that surprised me because I thought that turning 40 would feel more like a deadline, like a door closing, because that's a story we get told, especially as women, that 40 is when you're supposed to start grieving your 20s, your youth, your fertility, your face, and your options. But that's not actually what's been happening to me this last month. What's been happening is stranger and I think more interesting. I've been thinking about ships, sister ships to be exact. Boats that were built in the same shipyard, off the same blueprint, meant to sail the same route, and then didn't. One goes north, one goes south, one sinks, one floats, same origin, different life. I wrote about sister ships and this concept in my book, Embrace the Dark, shameless self-promotion if you haven't gotten the book yet or read it. So that's what this episode is all about. Not the version of me that's turning 40 in currently 7 days, the other ones, the lives of mine that didn't set sail, and how it feels to finally stand on the deck of the life that I am actually living. So before we get into the episode, before the conversation begins, I want us to just take a moment and ground in. Let's land in your body for a second before we go anywhere else. Find whatever position feels honest for you right now. You don't have to sit up straight for this one. Let your shoulders actually drop. Not the performance of relaxing, but really breathe in, relaxing. Take a breath in through your nose and let it out slower than feels necessary. I want you to picture a harbor. It doesn't matter if it's real or imagined or from a movie. Just a harbor at dusk, that particular blue-gray light where the water and the sky start to look like the same substance. And in that harbor, there are ships. Some are leaving, some are arriving, some are just sitting there, anchored, lit up from the inside. One of those ships is you right now, today, not a metaphor. You in your actual life with your actual name on the hull. Breathe into that for a second. This is your ship. This is the one that's real. We're going to spend some time today with the other ones, the ships that sailed without you, the lives that almost happened. But I want you to come back to this image whenever it gets heavy. You are not lost at sea. You are docked. You are lit up. You are okay. Let's get into it. So, here's where this actually started for me. For all of my childhood and my teens, I was certain that I would be a mother young, like definitely by the time I was 25. Until that time came and went without a pregnancy or a baby. That was just the plan, my plan, not even a plan I chose consciously. It honestly was a plan that I feel like I inherited or absorbed from being surrounded by people who married and became parents before the age of 25. True, I had always loved babies and started babysitting early, around the age of 11 or 12. But the idea that I would have children young was probably more of an inception and something that was put in me than something I really was consciously choosing for myself. Because alongside of that dream, I thought I was going to be an actress and a writer. Because apparently, teenage me had no interest in a life with only one identity in it. She wanted it all. And I will admit that I still do. That hasn't changed one bit. But then none of it happened on the timeline I had set up for myself. And for a long time, if I'm honest, some part of me filed that misstep in my timeline under failure, under life didn't go according to plan, which, if you sit with that phrase for a second, implies that not only was there a plan, but then I, as the me who had the plan, didn't make it happen. I failed to complete the plan. But here's the plot twist. And the whole reason why I wanted to make this episode, because now I am a mother. I am a writer. Hi, I wrote a whole book. Again, shameless plug. You can find it linked below if you haven't already gotten your copy. Those things just arrived 10 or 15 years later than the 15-year-old me, than the 15-year-old me had scheduled it. So what is it? Did I live the life, or am I living the life that I planned, or not? And I think the honest answer has to be both. And the both, or the yes and, or the no and, is the actual subject of today's episode. So, on the concept of sisterships, there's another term that I keep coming back to. I've heard it called sonder, this specific feeling of realizing that everyone around you is living a life as vivid and complicated as your own. Kind of this idea of like, you realize that not only are you the main character of your own story, but everybody else is the main character of their own lives. I want to borrow that feeling, but I want to point sonder inward at your own unlived or unsailed lives. There's something that I'm realizing about turning 40, especially as a woman. And I say, especially as a woman, quote unquote, with a full disclaimer that many men experience turning 40 as a time of great transition or great meaning in their life as well. But I think there is a very specific reckoning that happens around this age, particularly for women. You know, the version of you that stayed with that person, the version that took that job in the other city, or that went back for that extra degree. You know, the version of yourself, or have met or can picture the version of you that had kids at 24 instead of 38. The version of you that never left the town you grew up in, and the version of you that, if you did go back, maybe that version that never went back. Those lives are, those people are your sisterships. It's the same shipyard, the same person, the same raw material, the same blueprint, the same starting coordinates, just a different route that ended up getting taken at one point or another. It's the sliding doors concept. Who would you be if you missed the train? And I think that culture wants us to relate to those other ships in one of two ways, both of which I want to maybe not reject wholly, but semi reject today. One option in how we relate to our sister ship lives that we didn't live is grief, that we're supposed to mourn them, that we're supposed to torture ourselves about the road not taken. It's like very Bridges of Madison County. And if you remember that movie is all about going back for a lost love and then painfully, so painfully realizing that you actually can't go back because you are a different you than the you were then. So we're supposed to grieve these lost lives. And option two is denial, is to pretend that those other lives don't exist, to pretend that you've never once lain awake at night doing the math on what your life would look like if you'd made a different choice at 26 or at 37. This whole multiverse concept of what if there are other me's that are out there actually living those things? But the thing is I don't want either one of those. I don't want to be stuck in grief, and I don't want to be stuck in denial or dreaming. I want a third thing, which is closer to what my whole shadow work practice is all about: integration without collapsing. So you can acknowledge that the other ship lives exist, really look at them, really full the pull of them, even. Who would you be if you had gotten on that train, if you had stayed with that guy or girl, without needing to climb aboard the ship, without needing to live in the grief or the resentment or judgment, just to prove that you're happy and just fine with the life that you have? So there's a guy, James Hollis, a Jungian analyst that I've come across, and he has this idea of the unlived life, the notion that everything we didn't become doesn't just vanish, but that all of those sistership lives actually live somewhere inside of us, usually in the form of restlessness or envy, or that specific 2 a.m. wake in the middle of the night that most of us are familiar with, but doesn't yet have a name for it. Except I just named it when I wrote this. I called it other selfing, the feeling of dreaming about or missing the lives you didn't live. All of those imagined lives are your other selves. Back to James Hollis, his argument is that the unlived life doesn't go away just because you ignore it. That the unlived lives have to be metabolized. They have to be looked at. They need to be grieved a little, honored a little, and then released from judgment on the life that you actually chose. And doing that is different from regret. Regret is what tells you that you should have. This is more like acknowledgement. I could have that life, but I didn't. And here's what I got instead, or here's where I'm at instead. So, this section is playing with who you've been, who you are, and who you're still becoming. I want to actually sit in these 3 questions for a little while with each of you, just momentarily, and maybe you'll want to pause it as we go along, as I say these things. Each question that I ask you, maybe you'll pause and you'll journal on it a little bit. Because I think this should be the real backbone of the episode. And I hope that you're doing it right alongside me, just as I hope that you always do. Because just listening to me instead of doing asking these questions for yourself or doing this work for yourself, how would that actually help you? So play the game alongside. Question number 1: who have you been? Not your resume or your highlight reel, just the big important things. I mean, for me, I've been the girl who thought she'd be a mother by 23. I've been someone who was married and divorced by 28. I was the one who thought as a child and as a teen that I'd be on a stage or in front of a camera. I was the one who wanted to write something before I even knew that I had anything to say. And the highlight reel is that I have also been someone who spent years writing and rewriting quietly in my own time, in secret, in my office, writing my childhood stories, finding nuggets of hope and healing so that I could help people find their own way out of the same type of darkness that I had found myself in. So who have you been? Who have you been? And question 2, who? For me, now at this point, I'm 40, almost. I'm a therapist. I'm a mother and a wife, and a mother in 2 ways, both of the ways later than I had planned, and not at all how I planned it, but a mother nonetheless. I am a published author as of this year, which is a sentence that my younger self is finally starting to believe. And I am someone now who has sat in rooms for close to a decade, holding space for other people's worst fears and memories, which the 19-year-old me or the 25-year-old me that thought about becoming a therapist literally had no framework for. I would have been a terrible therapist at 25. because I had not lived the life that I have lived now. And finally, who do you still want to become? This is the question I actually want to spend the rest of the time on today. Because I don't think who do you want to become should only apply to your 20s or 30s or even 40s. I think that's a lie we tell people, that becoming stops at some point, that after a certain age, you're just maintaining rather than growing, and sometimes desperately maintaining. But no, 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 no. I think we are always capable of becoming, not necessarily becoming something more, becoming something better, but we are capable of adapting, evolving, and changing. And thank goodness we are, that we do not have to stay stagnant. And so, speaking of becoming, here's what I want to have happen in my 40th year. First and foremost, presence. This to me is the big one, the one that matters more than every other little hope or wish or dream. I have spent so much of my life either replaying an old version of myself or trying to become a future version of myself. The sisterships thing, it's the same thing, dreaming and regretting. And what I actually want to be for this next year and for the future years is to just be here in my actual life, just here, home, less time traveling, more noticing the actual places I'm in and the person I am already. Another thing I hope for my 40s is that I start book number 2. I don't yet know how it will come to be, like how I will literally write it, but I know the title, I know the idea of it, and I have started outlining what it will become. The first book was kind of the origin story, and I have a feeling that the second one is going to be about exactly this idea: the unlived lives, the integration, and the sovereignty of choosing your one ship instead of just living by default. Another thing that I hope for in my 40th year is another tattoo, possibly in New York. There is a tattoo artist in New York City that I am slightly obsessed with. Her work is gorgeous and colorful, and it fits this idea that I have. So, why a tattoo? Why am I sharing this? Because I think there should be at least one decision every decade that is purely symbolic and impractical and entirely yours. I got my first tattoo at the end of my 20s, my second in my 30s, just a couple of years ago. And so I feel like it fits that I would get another one in my 40s, maybe more than one in this decade, or maybe I'll just stick to one ink per decade. And wouldn't that be fun? The last thing that I will share that I really hope for my 40s, and I hope this for you as well, is strength, balance. And a new word that I have started to really become obsessed with is mobility. I've spent years trying to get stronger and healthier in a different way other than just for weight loss or smallness. And I'm proud of that. But lately, I'm way more interested in how well I move and how well my body moves than how much I can lift or how I look. Range of motion, flexibility, the capacity to get up off the floor without it being an event. And I think that's something I want to do an episode on eventually, is mobility. Mobility as a spiritual practice, not just a physical one. What it means to stay smooth and supple from our bones to our cartilage and our fascia instead of just strong. So consider that a preview. But that is what I want for my 40s. For this 40th year is presence, is mobility, is maybe a tattoo, and is to start my next book. So I encourage you to think about for yourself what it is that you might want, whether you have a birthday soon or it's months away. What are the things that you hope for yourself, that you hope for this life that you have chosen? Lastly, I want to get into, just quickly to touch on, how to stay present while still honoring the dreams that you have. So I don't just want to leave you with the idea. Here's what I've actually been working on in case this is a useful practice for you. When a sistership shows up, so when I catch myself kind of like doing the math on the life I didn't live, or thinking about like, oh, could I still fit in that life or still become that person? I try to name it out loud, even if it's just in my head, or name it in my journal. There's that life again, there's that ship again. And just naming it takes about 80% of the power away. Just realizing that I am trying to live a different life, turns it from being a judgment or a future resentment into something that is simply passing through, just popping into the harbor for a quick visit and then going back out to sea. I've also started asking a question other than, did I make the right choice? I'm asking, what did this choice make possible that the other one couldn't have? Because my husband, our daughter, and our son, my clients, this podcast, the book, none of that stuff exists on any other ship of my life. That ship, or those ships, have their own cargo. They have their own history. They have their own multiverse lives and things that are happening in different families. They're not better or worse. I'm just not carrying it in this life and in the me that I am in this life. And practically, lastly, I'm trying to let presence just be a small physical thing rather than some big lofty spiritual goal that I might fail at or struggle with. Something simple like breathing in awareness and checking in with my body before I check my phone in the morning. Having one meal a day where I'm not doing anything else apart from eating and digesting. And another thing that is big is actually finishing the conversation that I'm in before I mentally draft the next one, or before I'm thinking of a question to ask in response to what the person said. Those are just little ways that I'm practicing being present, and I invite you to practice as well. So if you're anywhere near a milestone birthday, like I am, or even if you're not, because I think this aching for other selfing and who we were, who we could be, hits everybody at some point or another. I'd invite you to go back to the exercise that I introduced us to at the top. Go back to the harbor. Find your ship. Picture your ship with your actual name on it, docked and lit up with your family and your friends and your job and your practices and self on it. And then if you want, let one of your other sister ships come into view. Just one of those dreams that you had, but don't chase it. Don't sink the ship. Just wave. Let it pass by and let it remind you what you didn't choose so that you can feel a little bit more fully the life that you did choose. It's okay to other self, but it's important to be here in this life too. Thank you for joining me. And remember, embrace the dark and the light. Happy birthday to me. Thank you for being here and for walking this path with me. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love it if you'd take a moment to rate, review, or share it with someone who might need it too. To keep the conversation going, come say hi on Instagram at Embrace the Dark and the Light. And if you're looking for more support on your healing journey, you can find free resources, meditations, and so much more at embracethedarkandthelight.com. Until next time, may you honor the dark, trust the light, and keep coming home to yourself.